If you take a coworker out and you take them on a hunt and show them what goes into that hunt, you know, the passion that you have for it, the work that goes into it, and show them that it's not like guys just driving around a pickup truck shooting anything that moves, you know. If they get an understanding for it, they're going to probably turn around and say, you know what, man, hunting is not for me. Or they're going to say, oh, I kind of like this. But either way, in the end, they're going to have an understanding. And when it comes time in the ballots, they're not going to be against you.
Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast, episode number 253. John Stallone, Hunter Recruitment, and How to Bow Hunt the Coyote. Support for the Big Buck Registry and the Deer Hunt Podcast comes from Hunter's Blend Coffee, imported directly from family farms, roasted and brought to you by hunters who support the hunting industry. Polar Works Coolers and the Chill Zone, specializing in the most durable, reliable thermal cups and coolers. Keep your drinks hot or cold in any element. Covert Scouting Cameras, remote cameras for hunting, wildlife, and security. Morse's Sporting Goods, a full line of sporting goods without the sales tax. And Big Buck merch. You can get cool, high-quality Big Buck t-shirts, long-sleeve t-shirts, and hoodies. And show support for this podcast by visiting www.bigbuckregistry.com/MERCH. The Big Buck Registry is a virtual museum of hunting stories. We preserve a piece of Americana by interviewing and recording hunters about their hunts and experiences from across the country. And who knows, maybe we'll learn a thing or two along the way that'll help us take our hunt to the next level.
Hey everybody, this is Dr. Grant Woods from Growing Deer TV. You're listening to one of my favorite deer hunting podcasts on the internet, the Big Buck Registry's Big Buck Deer Hunting Podcast.
This is Gordon Whittington, Editor-in-Chief at North American Whitetail Magazine, and you're about to listen to another great episode of the Big Buck Registry Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hey, this is Melissa Bachman of Winchester Deadly Passion on the Sportsman's Channel. You're listening to my favorite deer hunting podcast, Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow predators. My name is Jay, and thank you for tuning in to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. For Dusty Phillips and Jim Keller and the entire staff here at the Big Buck Registry, welcome to this week's show. There are a couple things I'd like you to do for us if you could. If you would, please check us out on iTunes, subscribe, and leave us a review. With your help, we're going to try and push this show up the iTunes charts. I know we have a lot of listeners out there, and I need you to take some action. I need you to leave a review and subscribe to the show. If you do subscribe, that'll give you access and notification each and every week that a new show is released. You can also access this show in its entirety on YouTube, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. It's all right there for you to access on demand at your fingertips. Regarding the harness program, we have an ample supply of harnesses to give away from our volunteer donors. If you're in need of a full-body harness, please send an email to j@bigbuckregistry.com. Hunter recruitment is critical for our sport to survive. QDMA says that declining hunting participation is one of the single most important issues impacting deer hunting and management today. But who's to blame? Is it social media? Is it a lack of hunter unity? Is it the media or the anti-hunter winning over the middle ground? These are tough questions to answer, but it'll be essential for us to answer these questions to reverse the trend of declining hunter numbers. We turn to John Stallone to discuss this topic in depth as he just wrote a think piece article about the subject. But we don't stop there. I've always been fascinated with John's ability to successfully take coyote with a bow and arrow. Hunting coyotes with a bow will undoubtedly help you with those adrenaline-filled deer hunting moments when you need to make it count. But how the heck can you get a good bow shot on a coyote? John discusses his strategies. We'll get to our interview with John Stallone in just one moment, but before we do, let's hear from our friends at Polar Works Coolers and Jim Keller with the deer news. Folks, I want to tell you about one of the best coolers I've found for the price in quite a while. I was with my family the other day, and I couldn't believe the price on the cooler I was looking at. I always wanted one of those high-end coolers because of the quality that I had heard of, but I couldn't justify the price. Then I found Polar Works. Finally, I found a company that understands quality and affordability. The Polar Works lineup is extensive and is filled with polar cups, polar tubs, and polar soft coolers. What do I love about these coolers? Well, for one, the ice stays frozen for a long period of time. But they've thought of other things in their design. For example, drain speed. No one likes a slow drain after a long weekend on the trail. The Polar Lock system. You're always protecting your valuable beverages from thirsty outsiders. And there's the non-slip Polar Feet. Polar Feet will prevent sudden movement when you're on the move. There's the sweat-free material, so you don't have to worry about cleaning up puddles when you're finished with your journey. Polar tubs hold ice for such a long period of time because of the 3-inch insulated walls, the heavy-duty gaskets, and the fail-proof hinges, which guarantee a freezer-tight seal. So check out polarworks.com when you're considering your next high-quality cooler without breaking the bank. That's www.polarwerkz.com.
For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News. Our first story this week, public hunting land access expansion in wildlife refuges. This story is from the deeranddeerhunting.com website. Interior Department Secretary Ryan Zinke's recent proposal could open nearly 250,000 acres of hunting land to new or expanded hunting and fishing at 30 national wildlife refuges across the United States. Under the proposal introduced recently, more than 248,000 acres would be open to a new or expanded hunting and fishing at 30 units in the National Wildlife Refuge system. If finalized, this would expand the number of refuges open to public hunting to 377 and the number available for fishing to 312. During his tenure as Secretary of the Interior, Zinke has emphasized the need to increase opportunities for citizens to access public lands and waters. Sportsmen and women have a long-standing stake in the management of America's refuge system, beginning with the President Theodore Roosevelt's establishment of the first National Wildlife Refuge in Pelican Island, Florida in 1903. In the years that followed, sportsmen-generated funds from duck stamp sales have been responsible for the creation and expansion of hundreds of refuges across the country. The proposed changes will be open to public comment for a period of 30 days, beginning with their publication in the Federal Register. This notice will be available at www.regulations.gov at docket number FWS-HQ-NWRS-2018-0020. An interim copy of the proposal can be reviewed now. Officials struggle to grasp brutality scope of poaching ring. This story is from the OutdoorNews.com website. Prosecutors in Oregon have filed more than 100 charges in an investigation of wildlife poaching that has spanned state lines and allegedly left dozens of animals shot illegally and sometimes left to rot. Officials in Oregon and Washington have said that the case is among the largest and most complex they've ever investigated, but still have not pinpointed any specific motives of the alleged poachers other than to kill for thrill. The case began in November 2016 when Oregon State Patrol officers set up game cameras on the national forest land near the Dalles. The motion-triggered cameras captured images of people in trucks shining a spotlight into the woods, then exiting the vehicle with rifles and headlamps, according to Washington officers' investigative reports. The Oregon troopers later found a headless deer near the location where the truck had been photographed. A few days later, the troopers recognized the truck and pulled it over. Cell phones seized from the suspects, which contained photos and videos of hunts as well as text messages, ultimately led Washington officers to more than 20 kill sites in southwest Washington and several more suspects. 8 people were initially charged last fall in Skamania County with more than 190 counts of wildlife violations, including 33 felonies. More charges have been filed in other Washington counties since. Meanwhile, Oregon officials continue to work the case. In January, officials charged 9 people with wildlife crimes in Clatsop County, 3 of them with additional violations in Lincoln County, and 4 of them with additional violations in Clackamas County. But most of the Oregon violations, some 120 misdemeanors in all, allegedly occurred in Wasco counties. Officials charged William Jared Haynes, 24, with 45 counts, Eric Christian Martin, 24, with 42 counts, Joseph Allen Dills, 31, with 12 counts, Aaron Brian Hendricks, 35, with 5 counts, David R. McCleskey, 59, with 4 counts, Sierra Dills, 18, with 4 counts, Eddie Alvin Dills, 58, with 2 counts, Kimberly Catherine Crape, 20, with 2 counts, Wyatt Keith, 17, with 2 counts, Aubrey Nicole McKenna, 36, with 1 count, and Aaron Colby Hansen, 38, with 1 count. Charges included unlawful taking or possession of wildlife, including deer, bear, bobcat, squirrel, and cougar, waste of wildlife, hunting with an artificial light, use of dogs or bait to hunt, for the cougar and bear, criminal conspiracy, aiding or sharing in a wildlife violation, and altering, borrowing, or loaning a license, tag, or permit. Unlike Washington, where spree killing is a felony, Oregon's wildlife violations are misdemeanors, but this may change in the future. As investigators continue to pore over evidence, more charges could be coming in Washington. Experts say permethrin-treated clothing can protect you from tick explosion happening this summer. This story is from the OutdoorHub.com website. In case you've been sleeping in a cave the past few months, experts have been warning of a tick explosion coming this summer, and there might be a way to decrease your risk of getting bit. Permethrin-treated clothing. It sounds like a toxic nightmare, but permethrin is a common insecticide used to kill ticks, lice, and mosquitoes, along with other annoying pests, and now you can get your clothes treated with it to protect yourself while enjoying the outdoors. Research from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention shows that permethrin makes it more difficult for ticks to latch onto your clothes, bite, or even move around, and they're now testing to determine its effectiveness on 2 species of ticks suspected to be on the rise, the Lone Star tick and the American dog tick. A new study, which was published in the Journal of Medical Entomology, ran tests on 10 clothing items purchased from the company Insect Shield to see how ticks respond to permethrin-treated clothes. It did not take long before all the ticks essentially lost their fine motor skills and fell off. Some lost their ability to move for at least an hour. Following CDC recommendations, those planning to spend time outside this summer should be treating boots, pants, and socks with sprays containing 0.5% permethrin. If you aren't comfortable handling it by yourself, you can either purchase or send in your wardrobe to Insect Shield and have them treat the clothing for you. Accidents with deer are up this time of year. This story is from the RadioIowa.com website and was reported by Pat Curtis. Motorists traveling across Iowa are at a greater risk for hitting a deer right now. Mick Klimesrud from the Iowa Department of Natural Resources says late May into the early part of June is the second worst time of the year for deer running into traffic. Only November ranks higher than June for vehicle-deer collisions. And the animals aren't just darting into traffic early in the morning or late at night. Another reason for the rise in the vehicle-deer crashes this time of year involves the increase in cars on Iowa roads due to the starts of the summer travel season. That concludes this week's edition of the Big Buck Registry's Deer News. Special thanks to Daniel Applebaum for leads on some of the stories this week. For links to the stories featured this week, please check our show notes at www.bigbuckregistry.com. If you have any ideas for future topics or have questions about any of these topics, please email me at jim@bigbuckregistry.com. For the Big Buck Registry, this is Jim Keller with the Deer News.
Well, thanks to Jim Keller for the Deer News. Without further ado, here is John Stallone. John Stallone, welcome back to the Big Buck Registry's Deer Hunting Podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm awesome, man. Thanks for having me back on.
It's like to have you back in the studio. This is great.
Yeah, it's nice. I've been on a 2-week break of podcasts finally.
Really?
I banked a whole couple, a bunch of them, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take 2 weeks off.
Yeah.
I just needed to refresh here, but we'll be back at it strong.
Yeah.
Next week. So I got several guests coming on, and just gonna hammer out a bunch more. I like to get all mine, most of them done, so that when I start hitting hunting season, I'm not having to do more than one every couple of weeks or whatever.
I like to do that too, if I can. Sometimes I just get and this is so stupid, but I get a little burnt out. I just don't want to think about it right then and there. I want to focus on something else completely. But getting a bunch in the queue helps that when hunting season rolls around, for sure. Oh
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think everybody gets burnt out. I mean, because here's the thing: you don't want to sound like you're asking the same questions to
right.
And you've definitely interviewed enough guys that you get a lot of the same answers.
You do.
Just definitely regurgitated in a different way, and partly because we're asking the same questions. So it's hard to always think ahead and think outside the box. And I know myself, I've tried to open it up to my listeners and ask them to ask questions that I'm not thinking of.
Right.
Right. Once you get to a certain point in your hunting career, you things that you don't think are questions for yourself might be for other people, and it's just
Right. Yeah, and I listen to my audience a lot about, that sometimes it's a basic question, a more complicated question, or there's a certain guest that I haven't had on yet that kind of goes with a certain genre or category, and I need to go find that person and complete that circle, or that, there's like the trackers of the Northeast, for example. There's like, I don't know, 4 or 5, and we've gotten to most of them now. But for whatever reason, I get a lot of requests for that. And then there's, but after that, it does feel like you're asking the same questions over and over, and you're getting very similar answers. And so you look for new and interesting people, or people that are interesting and different, and then try to find that person that's nobody's ever heard of. That's always fun. Or the topic that nobody's discussed yet. That's the hard part. Like what new rich content that nobody's discussed can I go find and bring back to my audience?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, if you think about it, eventually, I don't know, at least I feel this way. I feel like eventually you're going to run out of stuff to talk about.
Right, right. That's my fear. Man, I might have to pod fade here someday. I don't know. Yeah. I hope not, but
no. I mean, I think one of the things that I've noticed, or at least I've tried to do, is that even though a lot of these guys give similar answers, is to find the little nuances in those answers that make it different, that kind of add to, make that a little bit fuller, so to speak, that bit of knowledge fuller for you. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Everybody's got a little bit of, a different twist. Everybody's got a different personality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to talk to you today about a few things that are really off the chart here, and not our normal discussion, although related. You like to bow hunt for predators, and we've done predator hunting, but it's usually by gun. We've done bow hunting, but not for predators. And this is that exact uniqueness that I'm seeking, and that you're one of the guys that I recognize as doing this frequently and well, and it's not discussed very often. I don't see it done a lot, but so I mean, I can't wait to get into this because I don't know anything about it. To be honest, let's get that out there. I don't know anything about how this works.
It's real different.
Yeah,
it's different than most people think.
I go coyote hunting in the Northeast. It's with a gun. Everybody thinks with a gun, but man, I don't. You're in a different area of the world compared to me. You're using different weaponry. You're taking these predators with your bow and arrow. Just it's mind blowing to me, and I'm looking to you for some insight and answers, and just I'm quite blown away that you can actually do that. To be honest, because I it's hard for me to even find one with a gun, much less try to kill it with a bow and arrow. So very cool. I'm excited to talk about that. But
me too.
I'm psyched. But there's also this other pending problem that we have about hunters. We're losing numbers, and you've written an article about hunter recruitment and touching on youth and getting your kids into hunting. And I want to discuss this ad nauseum as well. I know we talked about just dedicating a few minutes to it, but I think it needs to go deeper. So let's get into that as well.
Well, excuse me. As you indicated, our hunters, the numbers are dwindling year after year. We get smaller and smaller. And really the only thing that keeps us in business, so to speak, the only thing that keeps us around is the fact that we generate so much money as an industry that the government can't ignore us. So really it's just greed, really, otherwise they would just shut us down. There would be no hunting. It'd be so much easier for the government to say, no hunting. We don't have to deal with all this lobbying and all this other crap from the antis, make my life easy, no hunting. But if it wasn't for the fact that we pay for so much of conservation and we have so many jobs that are associated with hunting, from the government level down to the manufacturing and to the mom and pop places and guiding and so on and so forth, that there's, and it stems out into lodging, food, travel expenses, gas, so on and so forth.
Right.
And even goes into ATV sales and all this other stuff that aren't really calculated into the hunting industry numbers, so to speak, that if they were to do away with hunting, it could pretty much ruin the country because it's that intertwined and been such a part of America for so long, for the United States for so long, that it would be devastating if it was to go away.
Yeah.
But we can't take that for granted. Every year, the numbers get smaller and smaller. And luckily, we're gadget-oriented people, and we spend a ton of money per person. And we actually spend more now than we did, in the 80s when our numbers were higher. But again, you can't take it for granted because it can go away very easily. They're predicting like 10, 20 years from now that we can be down to half the numbers that we're at. And I don't know where they come up with these numbers, to be honest with you. And I'm not a statistician, but to me, half the numbers, I seriously doubt we're still going to be generating the billions of dollars that we do with half the numbers.
Right. There's been a steady decline in hunter numbers and retention since the 1980s. And I don't know if the start of the study was in the 80s or if this is something that we just referenced the 80s in this particular situation. What do you think's the cause of the drop? I mean, everybody's kind of trying to figure this out. Where has this decline been coming from?
I think it's societal somehow. I think a lot of it has to do also with this is coming from my own polling. I think a lot of guys get out of it. A lot of people get out of it because where they can hunt is, the access is getting less and less. The cost to hunt is getting higher and higher, and stuff like that. So people kind of just, they get away from what used to be a family thing. Oh, hey, let's go throw on some orange suits and go out in the woods and, hopefully we'll shoot a deer. If not, we'll hang out with the family and everything's great. It's become more of an industry, and more of and the social media side of it, like it's really a double-edged sword. It's gotten bow hunting specifically, not so much rifle hunting, but it's gotten bow hunting help to grow it. But it's also created a lot of I don't even really know how to verbalize it, but a lot of social media superstars that are not necessarily helping.
Yep.
Helping the situation, and it's also within social media. So one of the things that's a problem is, let's say, I don't know, Jay, you post something about, I don't know, shooting deer in the head, at 1,000 yards.
Right.
Something distasteful. Okay.
Right.
Something distasteful, something that most hunters don't agree with. So you start getting a lot of flack from the hunters. Oh, I can't believe you post that. They keep hitting you up with all this crappy comments. Well, all that does, because let me use Facebook as an example, which is pretty much the same anywhere, but their algorithm, the way it works is the more people that are commenting, the bigger net they cast, the more people can see that post. So if even though you may not want to, you're basically promoting that negativity. And eventually that negative piece gets in front of anti-hunters, and then it goes viral within that niche, and it just brings a bad light to the hunters. Yeah. Because, that's how Cecil the Lion and stuff got. It started off with, it started off within the hunting industry, that post of with him with the lion and whatnot, and eventually it blows up and it goes a different way. So guys have got to be conscious about what they're posting, and if there's something that's online that is not, hunter friendly, is not promoting us in a good light, then don't comment on it. Send the guy a direct message. Send that person a PM or whatever and say, hey, listen, you're free to do whatever you want. It's a free country, but that particular post doesn't put us in a good light, and you may be enjoying a lot of traffic from it, and it might be, because guys put stuff up for shock, reasons all the time. But you got just let them know that this what you're doing could be hurting us, and they may take it down, they may not, they may tell you go F yourself, but at least you're not making it worse than it already is. Yeah. So it's important that we do that, And one of the other things that I talked about in that article is the bashing that goes on between hunters and the fighting that we do. We're constantly arguing with each other. And we do not, as a group, we do not show a unified front. Mm-hmm. And any anti-hunting, whether they're anti-bear, anti-salmon, whatever it is, they all join together and lock arms. Mm-hmm. And hunters don't do that.
They don't, do they? It's weird.
No, we're too busy arguing why I shoot a Matthews and you shoot a Hoyt, and too busy complaining about I'm a trad guy and you're a compound guy, and just all this stupid crap that, I feel like as a hunter, you should promote hunting as a whole, as long as it's legal, as long as it's done ethically and is shown in a good light, you should promote it.
Right.
And what I mean by promote it, I don't mean like share it, whatever. I mean, if you don't have to like it. Like I know plenty of guys that don't predator hunt because they don't believe in it, or they don't hunt bear or whatever. And that's fine. That you don't have to like it. But if you don't like it, it's like your mom always told you, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say it at all. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that situation,
right. Right.
It's like, just don't agree with it. Move on. You guys have a commonality. You're both outdoorsmen. You both love to hunt deer, but this guy, in particular, loves to, hunt coyotes. I get a lot, and I've noticed, like this time of year in spring, I do a lot of predator hunting. Mm-hmm. My Instagram drops off a bunch.
Right.
Because there's a lot of people that don't agree with what I do. Now, and I get some, hateful comments here and there. Like I posted a mountain lion picture up a couple of months ago of a mountain lion that I shot. And I got several people that were like, oh man, I thought you were cool and I loved your content until you started posting pictures of mountain lions. And I'm like, all right, man. I mean, I don't expect you to like it. I'm not like twisting your arm and putting a gun in your hand and go say, hey, go shoot that mountain lion. But I love hunting and I love all hunting. And, I try not to get into debates with people, but I let them know right off the bat. I'm like, listen, I mean, and forgive me if I sound conceited here, but I'm a certified wildlife manager, mm-hmm. certified deer steward. I have a master's in rangeland management and ecology. And so I research these things. I look at predator hunting. I look into all this. So I always look at things from management. I'm not going to do something that is going to hinder a population or possibly cause extinction or mess up or ecosystem of some sort. So like I'm doing it because I enjoy it, because it's legal, and because I think it has a purpose within hunting.
Right.
Right.
I feel like we lose perspective of the conservation that we bring to the world as hunters. And for some reason, and I cannot put my finger on this, there's no unity. You don't feel like you're on a team. You would think that you feel like, or you should feel like you're on a team as part of a group of conservationists all looking towards the same common goal. But it's not the case. We sit there and we bicker back and forth, and the speed at which we can comment and show negativity towards somebody's hunting success or just whatever they've done is light years compared to where it was in the 80s and mid-90s, where you had to mm-hmm. sit down and really think about, well, should I call this person on the cord telephone, or do I have to sit down and actually write a letter on paper or type it and then mail it? And you had to, now it's so convenient to make comments to tell people exactly how you feel right then and there as you thought it, that it's almost, I think, broken up any common ground in a lot of ways. It's shown all the individual facets of everybody's thoughts towards hunting, where, it's not just one size fits all. And we sit there and we, not only do we have to fight the antis, we have to, and I don't know if the antis are really our problem. It's the middle ground that's the people we need to win over. And when we're sitting here fighting about amongst ourselves about, well, you should deer hunt but shouldn't lion hunt, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. I come from the school, if you're going to manage game, you got to manage everything.
Right.
So, but I mean, what you were just talking about, I actually spoke with a couple of psychologists. And I was at a party with my wife and just two guys that happened to be in that field. And one of them was working on, and I forgot exactly the term for it, but basically from a society standpoint. And he was talking to me about social media and Facebook and all that stuff. So I'm going to back up a little bit before I get to that.
Yeah.
Part of the problem with hunting, it's a chest beater sport. It's a look at me, look how awesome I am. You know, that's our crowd cheering in the stands is when we post a picture or we bring the deer on the hood of the truck, you know, to the city center, because that's what it used to be, and show off that, you know, that buck that we just took. And so now it's no longer driving, you know, the pickup truck into the town square or whatever. It's posting it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. And you're looking to get social proof. You're looking to get recognition for what you've done.
Right.
Okay. And you're looking at everybody else and you're comparing your accomplishment to everybody else's accomplishment. And let's face it, we look hard enough, we're going to feel disappointed about ourselves.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that goes for myself too. I mean, I consider myself a very accomplished hunter. But there's plenty of times where I find myself envying other guys on social media and be like, man, how does this freaking guy shoot 200-inch deer all the time? You know, like, because I don't shoot 200-inch deer. I know why I don't for the most part, but I don't. Anyhow, so it's like I was talking to these guys, and it's like, I'm going to use Facebook again because it's the largest. It's their social algorithm, not the one that's working on the actual, not the computer part, but the psychology behind it is absolutely genius. You post something on there and you're expecting whatever, 20 likes, 100 likes, whatever.
Yep.
And you only get 10. And you're like, man,
nobody likes me today.
Nobody likes me. So let me boost that post. Let me pay for it to see more people. And what people don't realize is that, okay, I have on my personal Facebook page, I have 5,000 friends and I have 2,700 and change that follow me additional. So 7,000 people. So when I post something, realistically, 7,000 people should see it. But in actuality, there's only a couple hundred people that get to see it. And most people don't understand that. So you're not going to get, 10% of your total, in likes or whatever. And it just makes you feel bad. It's just that, I don't know. I could go down this hole for a long time.
Yeah, seriously, we could talk about this for a long time. It's a bigger issue, so a huge issue.
It is. But the bottom line is we need to be more united. We need to support each other. We need to stop bashing each other. If you don't agree with something, just keep your comments to yourself, unless it's something that's hurting us as a community. And if it's hurting us as a community, approach them privately.
Yep.
One, they're not going to want to lash back out at you. They're going to appreciate the fact that you went to them like a human being and said, "Hey, I think this and I think that and this and that." And you guys are either going to leave having an understanding with each other and an understanding one another's viewpoint, or they're going to agree with you. I mean, every once in a while you got that jackass that doesn't want to hear anything, and he's
right.
I had some guy that posted a video of him running over a hog with his quad several times, and the hog kept getting up and like trying to charge him.
Yeah. And
he's like, yeah, this hog would, kept charging me. And I'm like, dude, you got a quad, drive away.
Yeah.
An anti-hunter sees that. Every single one of us is out there doing that now. Right. That's what the view is.
Right. That was
because
just really dumb.
And it doesn't, every time, the anti-hunters and media in general use negativity as a tool.
Yep.
Anytime it's rubbernecking. Okay. You drive down the highway, you see an accident, you're going to stop and look. And that's how media sells. They're going to put out the negative stuff. They're not going to promote hunting as a, positive thing. I mean, if you look at like Disney, for instance, I mean, Bambi, you can go back to whenever that was released in the 70s or 60s, whatever that movie's from. Hunters are the bad guys.
Right.
And so it's already ingrained in society that hunters are bad. It's evil. Hunting is evil. So, and it's very easy for the anti-hunters to spin things and persuade the middle ground, as you put it before. But that middle ground is like 70% of the population.
Right.
So, it's very easy for them to persuade. And that's why, like, all these campaigns for, the dogs that we need to save and the cats and da-da-da-da. But, if the general public really knew where that money went to, that it went to lobbying and fighting us as opposed to saving that cat's life or that dog's life or whatever, but anyway, I digress.
Yeah. It's so weird that hunting took on a negative connotation back when Disney was making its films, where, because I think of my grandfather, that was his generation, and he's the one that taught me to hunt, and it was a great thing, and that everybody engaged in it, and it was a social thing, but it also was healthy for you, and it got you outside, and this is what it was all about, was getting outside and actually trying to harvest your own game, and it's a life lesson. It made you feel alive, but it also gave you great respect for the very animal you were chasing. I mean, it comes with a great deal of responsibility and conservation. So that was the lesson that my grandfather taught me, yet his generation was the one that started this whole thing about hunters are bad.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know. It's weird. So getting back to the main point is, how do we recruit kids into this environment where the speed at which negativity can fly goes, the speed of light?
Well, it's really, it's up to us. And I put in that article, I challenge everybody to try to get one person a year to take them out. And I say kids, it doesn't necessarily have to be kids, but it's better to start with the kids. One, because you're going to get more mileage out of them, and they're going to hopefully pass it on to the next generation. Whereas if you had somebody that's already in our generation, it's not necessarily going to get passed on to the next generation. If you're working with kids, you got to make it fun. You got to make it comfortable. You got to show them early success. So don't take them on, some crazy mountain hunt where they're got to hike all over the place. Don't go sit them in, freezing cold on, in a tree stand or a ground blind for hours on end. Start with some. I think a great gateway drug is turkey hunting. Take them turkey hunting. See that there's a dialogue established with the turkeys. I just actually did a podcast with Jerry Bethgy, and we were just talking about this very thing. He's like, he found it very easy to get kids interested with turkey hunting because there's a lot going on. It's proactive. Mm-hmm. Like I know, just taking my wife hunting when I got her into it a little bit. That was the first hunt I ever took her on, was a turkey hunt, and she really liked it. She's like, "Oh, we call, we're walking, we're doing this, we're doing that." It's not just, and then like the very next hunt, I had her sitting in a tree stand with me, and she hated that.
Right.
So it's about showing them the other stuff will come. If they grow a passion for it, you got to understand they're not going to have that same drive to go sit out in freezing cold rain, snow, 20, 30 mile an hour winds and hike all over God's country until the passion is there,
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be hunting. Get them into fishing, because hunting and fishing licenses do the same thing.
Right.
For us as a whole. So start them off with fishing, then ease them into hunting. I mean, that's what and as far as getting other people, I know that one of the biggest kickbacks or one of the pushbacks that I get is that, it's already hard enough to hunt. Why do I want to bring more people into it? I can't, there's no place for me to go hunting now. I'm already, fighting the Orange Army and whatever. I get that. Living out west, I don't have as much of it. but I am from back east. I did live in New York.
Right.
So, I was 16 and I go back to hunt there every year, and I do run into that every year. It's just tremendous amount of competition for a small amount of land. It's not, we don't necessarily need them to become hunters. If you take a coworker out and you take them on a hunt and show them what goes into that hunt, the passion that you have for it, the work that goes into it, and show them that it's not like guys just driving around a pickup truck shooting anything that freaking moves, if they get an understanding for it, they're going to probably turn around and say, you know what, man, hunting is not for me. Or they're going to say, oh, I kind of like this. But either way, in the end, they're going to have an understanding. And when it comes time in the ballots, they're not going to be against you. They're going to have an understanding, and they can sympathize with you and what you're doing, And I always talk to people about conservation, and I always educate people that have no clue. They just think hunting is hunting. Every time I have a dialogue with a non-hunter, I try to interject what we do as a community for the animals that we hunt, for the environment, and how it affects all these people that don't hunt. Because the reality of it is none of these animals would be here today if it wasn't for us.
Right. That's exactly right. I was trying to explain this to my son the other day, and it's weird. And I don't know where this is coming from necessarily, but he says, I don't like hunting. Yet I've taken him hunting, taken him fishing, taken him trout fishing, bass fishing, pumpkin seed fishing, deep sea fishing, tuna fishing, and he's loved all of it. Taking him turkey hunting, taking him squirrel hunting. He's enjoyed it, but not as much. The turkey hunting, I think, to him, he has a patience of a gnat. He can't sit for any time, so even waiting for the turkey to come in or roaming around trying to get action, he's told me that I don't like hunting. So you don't like hunting for you, or you don't like hunting in general? Like you don't agree with it? He goes, I don't agree with it. So let me tell you something about conservation. And we had this whole conversation about how hunters are conservationists, that the money that we drive into the conservation of the very species that we're hunting are the reason that those animals are alive in the first place. And that if it were up to the generation without conservation, that we would not see any deer, turkey, probably no squirrels, rabbits. You wouldn't see any of these game species that you see today, that we hunt today. They would not exist. They would be pretty much gone.
Right.
And he's like, huh, I never thought of it like that. So to me, that tells me that there's a lack of this education amongst our kids, even at that basic level, to understand that, hey, I am doing a good thing by going hunting to preserve the species that I feel like it's getting weeded out even at the education level like that. Maybe we got to start there.
Yeah, no, for sure. I wish there was a mandatory program in school, or just even like, I don't know, in social studies, even having, a chapter of it, so that they would understand.
Right. It seems like it should be in a textbook somewhere that this is how this happened. Right.
I feel like by 5th grade, they have a good grasp on, society in most aspects. And if they, inject it there, something like that, I think it would be amazing. But, the problem is we're not organized enough to even get that going.
I know. We're still fighting amongst ourselves to even think about organizing that aspect of it. But I don't know. Maybe some of us influential people need to band together and start some kind of a coalition, grassroots thing to get this thing back into the public schools. I don't know. We're thinking way outside the box, but that's what we do.
Well, it's funny that you say that. So I tried, and there's a symposium coming up, the R3 symposium. So that might be something if you're, and I'm trying to remember where it's at, but if you want to get involved in that, I'm thinking about going. I have a little bit of a scheduling conflict. I'll look it up for you and I'll send it to you.
Okay.
But it's basically anybody. It's open to anybody to go. But it's mainly geared for people that have a voice in the industry to go and find out ways and bring up ideas and discuss. It's a 3-day thing. They call it R3, so recruitment, retention, and my brain is off, but there's a third R.
Okay, yeah, I trust you.
And that's a great platform for it. But I was going to say is it's kind of sad how, what's the word I'm looking for? Absorbed we are. When I launched this initiative, I reached out to like 50, I want to say 40. It was 40 of my quote unquote friends in the industry that are, that are influential, that have a big enough voice. And I said, I'm doing this. I would like it if you guys can jump on with me on Blue Jeans. And, hopefully I was hoping that I would get like 5 to 10 people that would join on with me and do a, video conference. So I'm not asking them to go anywhere. I'm asking them to take an hour out of their lives.
Right.
These are all people that have probably done podcasts with me. So they've already, taken an hour out of life to promote themselves.
They know the gig. They know the drill.
Yeah. So to take an hour out of your life to sit and discuss this and come up with some ideas on how we can drive it, how we can saturate the Hunter Up. I call it the Hunter Up Initiative. The Hunter Up Initiative into the social media line through all our outlets.
Yep.
I was hoping by July 1st that I can get this out there and start making a difference.
Yep.
Even if we're changing 1% of our community, to me, it's worth it.
Right.
It's worth the time that I put into it. It's worth the effort. But not a single person made themselves available for that phone call. Had a bunch of people respond, "Oh, this is great." I mean, every one of them responded and said, "This is great. We're on board," but not a single one of them took time.
Tells me we're still in conceptual phase and not in action phase. We're not in.
Yeah, I mean, the day that I released that article, so obviously my blog has statistics. I had just released a binocular review.
Yeah.
I had 1,200 reads on my blog, my binocular review, the same day that I released my Hunter Up Initiative, and I had 126 people read that. They're so worried about gear and what binoculars they should buy for their hunt, but they're not worried about hunting. What it is you can't see it because it's not going to happen in our lifetime.
Right.
It's not going to happen in our lifetime. Same reason why we go and eat McDonald's, because 30 years from now when that affects me, it's 30 years from now. I can't even think about that.
Right.
So
anyway.
Yeah.
Well, we should probably move on to the next subject that we're going to spend 10 minutes on. Right. So worthy conversation. I mean, you can't get these things off the ground until you have good conversations like that. And that's where I think we got to start, and then have action plans and action items as you leave. What are we going to do about it? It's nice to talk about it. What are we going to do about it? Anyway, well, let's take a coffee break. And when we come back, we'll pick up where we left off with our interview with John Stallone.
Oh, that's good. Hey, I'm Jimmy Seitz of the Spiritual Outdoor Adventures TV show. I love coffee. And in 17 years of filming Spiritual Outdoor Adventures, we've traveled all over the world, and we have tasted coffee. I try to find the best coffee I can possibly find on every continent in dozens of various countries. And I just got to be honest with you. When I found Hunter's Blend Coffee, this is one of the top coffees I've ever tasted. And I have a 3-point taste test. I want to know, is it bold, and yet is it smooth? And I don't want it to leave a bitter taste in my mouth. And that's exactly why I love Hunter's Blend Coffee. Now, there's another reason, actually 2 or 3 more. One of them is this. They cut out the middleman as they find growers in less advantaged countries. And so this grower will then make twice as much money, and he will be able to turn around and help bless his community, his family, and even build his farm up and make it better. For example, there's a guy named Diego in Nicaragua, and he takes his extra earnings to bless his community, and he sponsors a lot of pastors. I love that. If you move over to Thailand, in Thailand, the growers employ 80 women, 3/4 of which had been in the big cities and were being exploited in the sex trafficking trade. Terrible thing, but they got them back at home in their villages. They're very happy now, and they have good jobs. I just love what they're doing. Now, there's one more thing. The Hunter's Blend Coffee Company guys are outdoorsmen, and they support hunting and conservation organizations. And I think that's just one of the greatest things that you can possibly do for the environment that we live in these days and for the animal herd. I am hats off to the Hunter's Blend Coffee guys. Thank you for what you're doing. And I would highly recommend that if you have not tested Hunter's Blend Coffee, that you go online to huntersblendcoffee.com, place your order, give it a try for yourselves. They have great mugs, hats as well, but just get the coffee, give it a try, and support a really good cause. Now, also, one more thing. Please go to your local outdoor retail store and ask them to put Hunter's Blend Coffee on their shelf.
And now let's return to our interview with John Stallone. All right, so let's talk about bow hunting predators. How the heck do you even start? I mean, I'm out here chasing coyotes with guns on bait piles, calls, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But boy, it's hardly ever at any kind of close shot unless it's accidental. You know,
Right.
I mean, you're hunting out west. I'm hunting out east. How do you get close to a coyote? That close to shoot? I mean, you're a good shot. I've seen you shoot bow at good ranges. So let's start there. But maybe it has to do with learning to shoot a little further out. I don't know. I'll let you explain.
No, I would say the majority of my shots on coyotes are under 40 yards.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And well, let me back up here because you kind of opened the door for this, for people's minds to wander. So yes, I live in Arizona, and yes, we have lots of coyotes. But I've called in and harvested with my bow coyotes all over the United States.
Okay.
Including New York, Kentucky, South Carolina, Florida.
Okay, so there's no differential. I mean, the eastern coyote is the coyote we're hunting in New Hampshire.
The sounds you use change.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds you use change, but that's about it.
Okay. Because I'd like to really become a better predator hunter. I think if I could even get decent enough to hunt them the way you're hunting them, that'll help me even with a gun. So I'm all ears. I'm all ears.
So let me start by saying this. I am not an expert coyote caller.
Okay.
I am not the guy that can, I don't call in coyotes every single stand. I have a pretty high success of calling in coyotes. I'm getting better and better at getting them to come in. But what I do have is, and I'm hunting with a bow, myself personally, 85% of the coyotes come in, I kill them with a bow.
Okay.
I have a very high success rate of getting them killed. And let me back up a little bit and tell you why I got into this to begin with. So for me, I'm always looking at trying to improve my hunting. I want to be a better hunter. And I wanted to hunt year round. So I started hunting predators, and I started hunting them with a bow because I wanted to be a better bow hunter. You're going out there hunting with a bow or hunting predators. You're learning woodsmanship. You're learning how to read sign. You're learning how to use the wind, all this stuff. But it also most importantly, I accredit my ability to get animals killed when I'm presented a shot to my predator hunting.
Yep. It
builds confidence. It helps you get faster at acquiring the target, ranging, drawing back, shooting. It all becomes fluid. I can't tell you how many times and especially during the rut, like even I'll equate it to tree stand hunting. Okay. Where I would have a deer or a doe come trotting by and a buck stopped for, 5-10 seconds, not even. That's enough time for you to range, draw back, and shoot if your body's trained and acclimated to it.
Okay.
And I can't tell you how many times back in the day where I'd be like I just blew a shot opportunity because I couldn't get set up fast enough. And then, I'm trying to stop. The buck starts trotting off after the doe again. And I try to get him to stop. He's not going to stop. He's got one thing on his mind. He don't give a crap about the crappy grunt that I'm throwing him from up in the tree, Right. So I got really good at what I call drive-by shootings, and this came out from coyote hunting. So for me, coyote hunting is not only a management tool, it's a tool to practice my craft. And so the commonality with calling animals, any animal, doesn't matter, predator, elk, turkey, whatever, there is always a hang-up spot. There's always a spot that where an animal comes into the area that you're calling and expects to see whatever it is that's calling to them. There's a guy by the name of Chris Rowe. I don't know if you've heard of him or not.
I haven't. No.
Okay. He talks about this in elk hunting. And the reason why I bring him up is he explains it the best. He put it into terminology that made me visualize it in a way that it made the most sense. I had been doing it already, and I've been doing it for years before him, but his explanation for it was excellent. So picture yourself in your house, and you hear your wife calling to you from another room. Mm-hmm. Okay? You go over to that room, and you hear her calling, and you look in the room, but you don't see her. And she continues to say, "Hey, babe, come in. Hey, babe, come in." And you don't see her. You're going to think something's fishy. You're going to want to verify with your eyes that your wife is in there. Otherwise, sounds coming out of this room, but I don't see my wife.
Right.
And that's the same thing for animals. And that's, like I said, any elk, deer, coyotes, bobcats, lions, tigers, bears, whatever. It's all the same. So really, it all becomes about the setup. So that's why, as a rifle hunter or whatever, it really doesn't matter. When you're setting up for a rifle for coyotes, we're going back to coyotes, you just want to be able to see for a long distance, and have clear shooting lanes.
Right.
Because your room is so much bigger. And by the time they get to a spot where they're expecting to see the call, it's usually within range. Even if they hang up 150 yards, 200 yards, you should be able to shoot them with the rifle. Then coyote hunting with a rifle really just comes about going to spots where there's a lot of coyotes, and you have a better opportunity to call one in.
Right.
That's what it becomes about. It becomes playing the wind and picking the right spot. Well, bow hunting for predators or any animal, like I said, yes, you have to pick a right spot. You have to pick a place where there's coyotes at, because if there's not, you're not going to call one in. But it becomes about the setup, and that's the most important thing. So, and part of that, it'll come from experience. If you've done a bunch of calling and you've watched coyotes, how they approach the call, mm-hmm. and get an idea of how they react to it, when you start walking through the woods, you start, looking for a place to set up, you have to envision, because you want to direct traffic, so to speak. You want to be able to make that coyote come in to where you want it to be. I put up a couple of videos on YouTube like 10 years ago, and they do a real good job of describing that particular portion of it. But I'll try to paint a picture for you here visually,
okay.
With my words. So my approach, I always approach a stand. I shouldn't use the word always, but I try to.
Right. Careful.
I try to approach a stand with where my end game is, where I'm going to set up, that the wind is perpendicular to me. So a lot of times I'm walking in with the wind in my face, and then I make a hard right or a hard left, make a 90-degree turn at some point, so that the wind is now going from my left to right or from my right to left. Mainly because if it's in my face, I run the risk of predators coming from behind me, mm-hmm. and they don't come in. I'm trying to, again, this goes back to what I was saying, I'm trying to direct traffic. I'm trying to get them to come across me and give me a broadside shot. Okay.
Okay.
So with the wind going left to right, there's a very good chance that a coyote will circle to get the wind, and when he doesn't smell anything, he'll come closer. So a perpendicular wind. I use a Fox Pro.
Yep.
It's very, 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 very difficult to do it with a mouth call, because you can't get the coyotes they pinpoint you, and then you get, caught drawing back and stuff.
Right.
So I always face the main speaker in the direction that I believe that the coyotes are at right now.
Okay.
Like if I'm calling to a thicket or whatever.
Yeah.
I face it, and I've set up my setup with the wind that is going from that thicket away from it, so that I'm gonna check again. It's really hard to paint the picture. All right, let's.
No, I'm getting it.
The thicket is off to my right. Okay.
Yep.
And the wind is going from right to left.
Mm-hmm.
Now I face my speaker towards the thicket. That's ideal setup. So The next thing I'm looking for, so now I'm kind of, and of course it doesn't work. It doesn't always work that they're going to come exactly the way you expect them to come, but
they never
there's
do.
a very good chance that they will.
Okay.
So with that setup, if they come straight to the call, great. If they don't and they circle, it's still good because they're going to come around to kind of catch the wind. They're not going to smell anything and they're going to come in anyway. That's why that setup works. But the main thing is setting up that room that we discussed earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And that room could be, a briar patch, could be a bush, a small tree. So I call it the hide. That's where I hide my call.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the hide is always a place that I can shoot to, and it's typically under 30 yards from me.
Yeah.
I've done them as close as 5 yards, or 10 yards rather, and as far as 45, 50. But of course, the further away it is, then the longer shot you have. So my setups are designed that the coyote bobcat, fox, whatever, is going to come straight to the call and look for the call long enough for me to get a shot off.
Okay.
Because that's the other thing. People are like, oh, well, how do you stop the coyote? When do you squeak at them or whatever? No, I never ever make a sound other than what the call is making. And they always stop. Again, there's that word always. Almost always stop exactly where they're supposed to.
Right.
I'm actually in the process of trying to do a tutorial video of this.
Okay.
Again, it's very hard to visualize, and the terrain is going to dictate what these, what the hide is going to be. It might be a boulder pile. It might be, a rise. It's something that obstructs the vision of the coyote to the call, that they physically have to come around to inspect to see into it.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, that makes sense. All right.
So now that, depending on what sound you're using, so let's say you're using a rabbit in distress, it doesn't have to be tremendous to hide a rabbit. But if you're using a fawn in distress call, now you got to think, this is a deer. He's going to expect to see a deer from here, here, and here.
Mm-hmm.
If it was standing there. Or if you're using coyote sounds, again, coyote is a much larger animal and you need a much bigger obstruction for the the coyote to come around to inspect to see it.
Yep.
So I use like coyote pup distress a lot.
Yep.
So a lot of times I will put that like into a juniper tree or something, where like he really has to come and look hard and give me that 4 or 5 seconds. And they're not going to give you a long time. They're going to come, they're going to stop, they're going to look. And that look might only be just a couple of seconds, but we'll get to the actual shooting part here in a little bit. So once I found a good hide, that good hide also has to be in conjunction with a good blind. Okay. So I don't carry a blind out in the field with me. I just use natural cover. And that natural cover, when you're looking at it, it might be a little hole in it. Again, I'll use the juniper or cedar as an example. It might be just a little hole in there, and I kind of break some more branches or whatever, and I get into it a little bit deeper so that I have the opportunity to come to full draw and make a shot. Sometimes the coyote will come from a different angle, and it kind of screws you up, and you won't be able to make a shot, and it happens. But it doesn't happen often if the setup is as perfect as possible.
Gotcha.
So I'm always looking for a good backdrop. I try to almost always have the sun at my back. And like I said, I always try to have the wind from left to right. That being said, I specifically look for certain conditions, and I have certain areas that I hunt that when the conditions change, I can adjust my hunting area to those conditions. So I have those conditions when so I have the sun at my back. So I have the wind perpendicular when I approach. Like one of the things I do out here when I'm hunting within the city limits, which is another great thing about hunting with a bow. So, all these places that I can hunt with a bow that I couldn't hunt with a firearm are open to me. So nobody else is calling to these coyotes.
Right.
Anyway, so one of the things I do is like I'll use the road. I'll use the main roads. A lot of times it's just a big blocked off section, like it's got roads on 3 of the 4 sides or whatever. And I'll park on the road and I'll walk in depending on which way the direction of the wind is or which way the sun's coming up, or,
Okay.
basically adjust to and I look now, specifically like here in the desert, like I'll look for, and I do this, back east as well. I look for drainages, thick areas, something that would hold, like, let's say a lot of rabbits maybe, or, someplace that a coyote would be hunting or would be, depending on the time of morning or the time of afternoon, we're getting to the spot where they might be bedded down, where they'd be bedded, and I go and I attack that area based on the time of day and where I think coyotes would be during that time of day. And then I look for a setup that fits that description that I gave you earlier.
Okay. So looking for the hide, looking for the perpendicular wind, looking for the wind that's moving, you said right to left or left to right?
Either way.
Yeah. Okay. Just as long as it's perpendicular.
Or even slightly quartering, is fine. I kill a lot of coyotes that come in straight head on.
Okay.
Even though the wind is going left to right or whatever. But what I don't like is when they come from behind. But if the wind is going from left to right, if they come from behind, a lot of times they'll take a kind of like a wide crescent run towards the call and still come across you.
Gotcha.
I've killed plenty that came from behind me that very same way, because if you walked kind of in a straight line to your spot, chances are they're not going to be coming in directly behind you because you walked through there. If they were there, you would have spooked them. So
you're also betting on that they won't circle around downwind of you, I assume, or doesn't it matter?
Well, they're not going to circle around downwind of you because you're not the one making the noise.
Right.
Yes. I mean, scent cone wise, after a certain, distance, if the call is only 20 yards in front of you, your scent cone's eventually going to match up with the sound. And yes, they can, and I'm sure it's happened. But I've never once witnessed a coyote wind me, except for one time when I was with a kid that I took out, and he showed up smelling like God knows what, and I knew we were going to get busted, because if I could smell him sitting 5 yards away from me, a coyote could smell him from 100 yards away.
Right.
So, maybe I should have backed up before I went through all this talking. I approach coyote hunting like I approach whitetail hunting.
Okay.
I am scent free everything. My approach when I walk into my stand, and I call these, these are coyote stands, I try to be as quiet as possible. I try to be as stealthy as I try not to, especially when I'm out here in the open areas. I don't skyline myself. I try to make as low impact of an approach as possible. And that, I feel, has made my opportunities to see a coyote go way high.
Gotcha.
I know a lot of guys that approach, that drive up, park the truck, walk out 50 yards and make a call. And then a coyote comes and hangs up there 200-300 yards, and they just shoot it because they got a rifle. Not going to work with a bow. When I drive in these dirt roads or whatever, when I'm not using the main roads or whatever, and I'm like hunting more wilderness type stuff, I park my truck where it's hidden from view. And my stand is never, if I look back and I can see my truck, I don't care how perfect that setup looks, I don't do it. Because if I can see the truck, coyote's going to see the truck.
Right. Okay.
And he might still come and you might still see one, but he's not going to come close enough to you to shoot him with a bow. What I'm talking about works excellent for shotgunning as well, which I think is a good way to get into this, practice with your shotgun, because a lot of guys have trouble watching coyotes run away, and you're going to watch a few run away if you start off with the bow.
Yep.
So do it with a shotgun, and this works out great with the shotgun. The shotgun, you could actually do something that you can't do with the bow, and that's choose even thicker areas and thicker setups. So like, with the bow, you can't really shoot through brush. You can't.
That was one of my thoughts. And like, how open does it need to be in order for this to go down? Because obviously bows aren't going to carry through brush like a bullet would.
Right. Not very open, actually, to be honest with you. I look for quite a bit of obstruction, actually, because I know I'm not going to get busted. Yep. And I know that as long as my shooting lane to the call is open, and I have a couple to either side, I have a very good chance of shooting one.
Okay. And
done setups where like it was so tight and you would be like, and literally they're in your lap, like in your lap before you even see them. Those ones are a little difficult because you got to be like quick draw McGraw on those. And by that's what I was kind of getting at. It with a shotgun, you could do that. It's like, flushing a covey of quail, boom, you see them, pull up and shoot. I took one of the guides that works for me, one of my good friends, Shane, and we did this right after javelina hunting in February. We did this stand, and I literally called him into 4 yards into his lap. Like he was so surprised. He actually shot as he was pulling the gun up and shot the freaking coyote's foot off the first shot, and then got him with the second one. But yeah, you can, with a shotgun, you can call them in. You could choose really, really tight spots. If they're really tight and thick, then the whole area is a room. They have to come right to the call because they can't see it. Just like you can't see them, they can't see what's calling to them. But chances are, since they're running and you're not moving, you're going to see them before they see you. And with a shotgun, like I said, you can take a snapshot very easily. So going back to the bow, I look for, somewhat open, not very open. And that's the thing. Everybody wants to see. You got to get that out of your head. Like, yeah, you want to see them. You want to see them when they're at 50 yards or 60 yards. Just enough time for you to draw back so that when they get to 20 and 30, you can make a shot.
Yep. Gotcha.
That's what it is. You don't need to see 200 yards. You don't need to see 100 yards, whatever. I can very, very rarely can I see past 100 yards. Very, very, very rarely.
Okay. And you're using the Fox Pro, and what do you have other than the Coyote Pups Scream 3? What other sequences are you using? Or does it matter? I assume it difference or would matter depending upon the time of year, like we've talked about with the guys from Fox Pro. Depends on the situation.
I found that Coyote Pups Scream works all times of year and all times of day. Okay. That's like it's not my go-to. Like, it's not the first call that I use. Honestly, for me out here in Arizona, I don't want to tell you because if anybody listens, they're going to use it too much and then screw it up for me. But I tend to lean towards the rabbit stuff.
Okay.
I think rabbit's an easy animal to conceal. You can play them pretty loud and you can reach out there. I've personally heard rabbits screaming for, 5-10 minutes naturally on their own.
Okay.
I think it's easy to manipulate. And one of the things I do is on my Fox Pro, I have a Fox Pro Fusion. I play with the pitch. I play with the pitch and I play with the volume.
Okay.
So that it changes up and it doesn't sound the same monotonous sound over and over and over again.
Gotcha. Okay.
I call for 10 to 12 minutes straight. And if I haven't had one come in, a lot of times I'll switch to the Coyote distress call. And again, it really depends on the time of day. Once I start getting later in the day, I don't even use prey and distress calls. I will use like Fox distress, or I'll use a Coyote distress, and it depends what I'm going for.
Okay.
So we're talking specifically about coyotes. I use Coyote and distress because Coyote pup and distress because it invokes a natural, maternal response, or maternal paternal response to come and check out. They're very, coyotes are very pack oriented. So if they hear another coyote in distress, typically they'll come check it out. They might not always be hungry. They might not always, So, as far as using calls, I try to think about what's the main food sources in the area.
Yep.
And use that call. What's likely, if you're in a place where there's a lot of bobwhite quails or whatever, and, bobwhite quail in the stress might work. I know kitten in the stress works really well in a lot of places. If I'm looking to like call on lions, I've used javelina in the stress works really well for me here. Like some of the domestic animals, it really just depends. Like if you, that comes with you being able to read your area.
Yep.
There's certain sounds that'll work everywhere. I mean, a rabbit, this cottontail rabbit works every state in the United States that there's coyotes, because there's some form of cottontail in every state. So, mice, rodent and stress stuff, that stuff works. But my go-to here specifically is a rabbit, and I use a lot of the coyote. I use some kitten. I use some gray fox calls. Gray fox fighting with a coyote works real well because they're kind of mortal enemies. They hate each other.
Okay.
So that usually will bring in the cavalry.
Sounds like you're mixing it up. You're using multiple variations.
I mix it up when I find that one's not working.
Okay.
But a lot of times I go to my go-tos.
Gotcha.
And only because I've had a lot of success with them. And one of the things that I've done is I never call in the same area. Like I always give 3 to 6 months between going back to an area to call.
3 to 6 months.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Why?
Because if I've called in there before, especially if I called something in and didn't kill it, if I call something in and I do kill it, 3 months. Because then a lot of times it takes about 3 months for a new coyote to work back into that area.
Okay.
If I've called something in and I've gotten busted, definitely 6 months. And the reason being is I don't like to educate them, and when they come in, I don't like them to come in skittish. I want to say that 90% of my coyotes that I kill come charging in or trotting in and come straight to the call. And gotcha. I don't get that one. I every once in a while I will. I get that one that kind of, is a little leery. Will come to a certain spot, and they don't even come to care to look into the room.
Okay.
All
right. So
they're real cautious, and those are the ones you could tell that had some kind of something's fishy. I've been in this situation before,
yep.
Or they might be catching some of your wind or whatever. But and a lot of times if you adjust a call right, you can get them to still come in and make that shot. But and I have on several occasions. It's just I like them, to come in on cue and me draw back and shoot. I'm also very conscious of weather and moon. So, nights that there's a full moon, I know that my only opportunity is really going to be that first call in the morning, and I could get away with some midday stuff. And depending on what time the moon rises that evening, I might be able to get away with 1 or 2 stands in that later part of the day. I look for major changes in weather, like especially if it's raining all night long and it's going to clear up for the morning. Get out there that morning, because those coyotes had a hard time that night trying to get something killed, and they're probably very hungry. Super windy all day long, then it calms down right before dark. Make a call, make a stand.
Right.
That I look, especially now as it gets hotter and hotter. Oh man, I can't, I wait. I kind of give up. Hunting from now to, if I get a couple of clients in, I might hunt till June, because it's still fairly cool in the morning and it cools down enough in the afternoon. But then I'll wait till August when we get monsoons. And man, I play those monsoons every time we get heavy, hard rains. Second the rain lets up, I'm out there.
Okay, so you're playing the rain just like you would almost like a deer hunt.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
Snow, same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Just inclement weather. Yeah.
Gotcha. So cool, man. I think that opens my eyes to how to in detail set up my stands, even if I'm not bow hunting. Just set up close encounter coyote sets from here on out. And you're saying that this works West Coast, East Coast, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've killed quite a few.
Okay. And you like to play with the pitch. The pitch is something I've never played with, but you're saying that's important.
Pitch is huge.
Okay.
Now, here's a caveat to that: is you're always looking down at your controller, you're going to miss a coyote.
Yeah, that I hate.
Especially
right.
So when you're now, some of them, I know Fox Pro, you could kind of program it and set your own
Yep.
So you set that up. My Fox Pro has Fox Motion, which already plays with the pitch, and then it switches speakers back and forth, messes with the volume on its own. That works really good too. But I never start off with that. I will call for the first 2 minutes where it's directional, because I want the coyotes to come from that, like I said, come from a certain direction. Then I'll switch it to the Fox Motion.
Right.
Because of I don't want it to sound monotonous or whatever. And it also kind of, it adds a realism to it.
Yep. Let me back it up one step further. Before you even get to the spot, how do you decide where the coyotes are, or even that they're even there, and within an area decide, hey, this is the direction I'm going to point my Fox Pro at?
Okay, so you can do, you can make educated guesses, which is what I normally do. But if I was like going to do a competition or something like that, which I haven't done in years, but I would go out at nighttime and I would do some coyote howling, and just locate coyotes in areas, and then it's just like roosting a turkey, for the next morning,
right? Yep. So you are doing the pre-scouting before you.
Yeah, like I said, now I don't anymore. I have literally, if you saw my Onyx maps, I have probably 200 stand spots or locations that I have marked. And I just rotate through them. Yeah. But yes, when I was just when I go out of state or whatever, and I don't know. Now I know what to look for. Yeah. And it becomes second to me. So I try to verbalize it. Just whatever you feel would be bedding cover, or like I said, a place that a coyote would hunt for rabbits, or,
So if you see rabbit sign.
Yes.
Or see a rabbit, chances are that might be where they.
When I see rabbits, I know that there's a rabbit-eating predator nearby. Exactly. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Good to know.
Whether that's a fox or whatever. Yeah. We talked about coyotes, but if you want a fox hunt or whatever, fox pup distress, smaller animals like rabbits and birds. You're not gonna call a fox in with a bigger sounding animal. I have here and there, but because fox got small man's disease, they come looking for a fight.
Yeah. What about bobcats? I can't hunt bobcats here, but other states you can. I call in a tremendous amount of bobcats around here, which is odd, but can't kill them.
Yeah, that sucks. I go nuts if a bobcat came in that I can't shoot. It happens to me every year, actually, because we have a season. Yeah. And from March 31st to I think it's August. It's whenever deer season opens. So like the mid-August. Yeah. There's no fox or bobcat. None of the fur bearers. So like badger or any of those. Just coyotes and lions are year round. Yeah. So yeah, it happens to me all the time in spring. I call on bobcats. So what I do is I avoid the foxy looking areas and the bobcat looking areas. And I kind of stay away from that. They here in the Southwest, I've called them in Utah. I've called them in Colorado as well. But I look for, if I'm looking for a bobcat, I look for more broke up country, more, rocky stuff. Same thing with fox. They like, rock outcroppings, a lot of stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah. Where a coyote, I tend to get, and I say the flats, but the flats here compared to probably what you're thinking, it's not like prairie. It's not these big wide expansions. It's just flat walking. Yeah.
I know the areas you're describing because I've seen fox in those areas. I haven't seen coyotes in there, but I've seen fox in these kind of flat areas. I don't know why it is, but you're right. Yeah, I get it.
Oh, I've seen coyotes and called in coyotes everywhere, like way up on the mountain, really rocky, nasty stuff, like where I went to go try to call in a lion or something, and a coyote came in. But yeah, coyotes are occupied. They're so adaptable and they're so opportunistic that they'll be anywhere.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool, man. So, well, John, I think we've covered quite a bit of content, and we've shared our own opinions about the future of the hunting industry and hunter recruitment, and great education on how to set up for a coyote for a bow kill, which I would think would carry over into any coyote hunting situation using a Fox Pro. That was a very detailed description of where to go, how to set it up, how to find them. Absolutely perfect description. I appreciate you doing that.
No problem. I enjoy talking about it.
Well, now, in the event that we didn't answer somebody's question, or if we've created more questions than answers, where can we reach out to you to find you or your website or read about your articles?
I mean, you can find me on any social media outlet, but if you want to read my articles, go to johnstallone.me.
Okay.
That's .me. That is my blog, and pretty much everything's connected to that. My outfitting service, my podcast, all my articles are there, gear. But you could also email me through there. And we have an Ask the Pros section. So if you want to, shoot me a line, had some questions about whatever, I'm always, make myself available to answer those questions.
Yep.
Because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, and I don't want to open up another can of worms, but there's a lot of guys out there that will not share information, especially with new hunters, and it's deterring people from wanting to get into hunting.
Yep.
So I do my best not to alienate people. But I mean, if you ask me a question, where should I go hunt? I'm going to teach you how to fish and not give you fish. So.
Right. Teach them to hunt for a lifetime.
Exactly.
Yep. Gotcha. Awesome, man. It's been an honor and pleasure to have you back in the studios, John. It's always a pleasure just chatting with you. We just fun talking to other podcasters and guys that get it.
Absolutely, man. I fully enjoy it, and I love being on the show. I love talking hunting. So
I appreciate John coming on and talking about an issue that is really critical to our future as hunters. Think about that for a second. Hunter recruitment is down. Hunter involvement is down. So how do we solve this problem? Well, this is a question that will not be answered on this show completely, but certainly needs to be discussed endlessly if we are going to preserve our hunting heritage. Dusty, do we have a Chubby Tines tip of the week this week?
I do.
The Chubby Tines tip of the week is sponsored by Morse's Sporting Goods. Firearms, used firearms, bows, used bows, located at 85 Kentucky Falls Road in Hillsborough, New Hampshire. Give Jim a call at 603-464-3444, morsessportinggoods.com. Your dollars go further in New Hampshire. There's no sales tax. Morse's Sporting Goods.
We got hunt season. It's just a few months away. It is the time to get your camo out, get it cleaned up, washed up, do whatever you need to do to get it ready. And it's time to start thinking about killing that scent on it. It's set around, all spring, and now we're into the summer. It's time to start thinking about that kind of stuff.
What would you recommend we start doing right now to start thinking about scent?
It varies for different areas and different terrain. And, right now I go out and just take a pair of nippers and cut off some cedar limbs. And I take a toter box, which is a plastic toter box, and I throw the cedar right in there with my camouflage.
That's cool. I like that. That makes sense. Is there anything else besides that you start prepping for, or you just get there first?
Yeah, I like to focus on my scent right now. Just getting that ready, and obviously it's food plot time and other things, but right now my focal point's getting on that scent control.
Okay.
Start early, and you won't have to worry when it comes time.
Right. Excellent. Dusty, where can we find you when you're not hanging out here in the studios with me?
Shoot me an email, dusty@bigbuckregistry.com. You can look me up on Instagram and Twitter @ChasingAntler, Facebook.com/Chubby Tines Outdoors. Jay, where can the people reach out to you when you're not on the mic?
Likewise, you can shoot me an email, jay@bigbuckregistry.com, and you can visit us on Facebook, facebook.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Twitter, which is twitter.com/bigbuckregistry. We're also on Instagram, instagram.com/bigbuckregistry, and YouTube, which is youtube.com/bigbuckregistry. On YouTube, you can listen to all of our podcasts in their entirety. As far as videos are concerned, it's a boring video, but the audio content is there, so you can actually listen to our podcast. You can also listen to all of our live shows that we've done on Thursday nights when we do them, and we've gone back and re-interviewed a lot of our previous guests we had on the show just to put a face to a voice, let's put it that way. You can always listen to our show on other places as well, not just YouTube. We're found on Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and as an Amazon Alexa skill. Go to Alexa and say, Alexa, enable Big Buck Registry. And if you would like to submit a buck to our page for consideration and be featured on our page in front of 250,000 diehard deer hunting fans, all you have to do is go to bigbuckregistry.com/mybuck, and all of the instructions will be right there. think that's pretty much everywhere we're at. I think that's a wrap, Dusty.
That's a whole lot of big buck, Jay.
Sure is. I'm Jay Scott.
I'm Dusty Phillips.
And this is the Big Buck Registries Deer Hunting Podcast. We'll see you next week.